Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We welcome our witnesses. We thank our colleagues for their attendance, and we welcome the ladies and gentlemen of the public for being with us this morning. If I could characterize the present state of financial distress in which we find our country and our world, I think that much of that distress could be tied back to the unwelcome development of conflict of interest. Conflict of interest has been institutionalized in the last number of years in our law books, in our business practices, and unfortunately, the consequences of those conflicts of interest are felt by every American and every citizen of the world in some way, very negatively today. It began with some work this committee did, what now seems like a long time ago, in the Enron scandal. And one of the findings that came out of our work on the Enron scandal was the realization that firms that used to be honest arbiters of public accounting had somehow morphed into promotion entities for people raising and transacting in capital. And out of that grew the efforts by Senator Sarbanes and former member Chairman Mike Oxley that dramatically changed the world of accounting and financial services. We saw another manifestation of that conflict of interest far too late in real estate lending. It used to be in real estate lending that the person who originated the loan generally maintained an interest in whether or not the loan was repaid. And so those loan originators were careful about to whom they loaned, how much they loaned, and under what circumstances. Over time, a conflict of interest evolved in that field, and a whole industry grew up in originating, securitizing, and selling loans where the profit was derived not from the collection of the loan, but from the origination and packaging of the loan. Conflict of interest really then grew between those who had an interest in originating as many loans as they could, to whomever they could, irrespective of the credit worthiness of that person, and the more natural interest in collecting the loan once it was made. We believe that that same conflict of interest problem is now exposing itself quite potentially to $9.2 trillion worth of pension assets held by Americans in their defined contribution accounts and individual retirement accounts. 90 million Americans have either a defined contribution account, an IRA, or both. Those accounts hold $9.2 trillion in them. In the last hours of the prior administration, a rule was issued that many of us have significant concerns with because we believe that it runs the risk of spreading that conflict of interest disease to this world of pension and IRA holdings. Chairman Miller, myself, Senator Kennedy, and Senator Grassley have expressed our concerns about this rule to the administration. And as a result, our former colleague, now Secretary Solis, in response to a decision by the President, has subjected this new rule to a period of review. Our concern is that the proposed new rule has two significant weaknesses. The first is that employees of an affiliate organization to a money manager or financial manager may now be free to give unfettered and conflicted advice in a way that could well cause harm to the pensioner or to the citizen. And the second concern that we have is that an employee directly employed by that money manager or financial firm may have the ability to simply make a rudimentary review of the findings of an independent computer model and then quickly move on to other fields of advice that could expose the assets of that pensioner or citizen to undue risk. We believe that that's the nature of the risks posed by the rule. And in part, today's hearing will focus on the pros and cons of that rule, the consequences and perhaps benefits of that rule. But I do want the witnesses to go beyond that, and I would invite our colleagues to go beyond that, to consider more broadly the question of what extent, to any, we should institutionalize conflicted investment advice in the pension arena. And if we should choose not to do that, and I'd favor that we don't have conflicted advice in that arena, what is a way that we could supplant conflicted investment advice with what I believe strongly is the preferred alternative, which is qualified, independent investment advice? We have assembled a very strong panel this morning with some widely varying points of view on this topic, on these topics, and we'll hear from each of the witnesses this morning. This is the first in a series of hearings that this subcommittee will conduct on the whole question of Americans and their pensions. The full committee has laid some of the groundwork for this work, both in the fall, in the prior Congress, with the work that we did together on the fee disclosure issue, and more recently, the full committee hearing on the question following up on fee disclosures where Mr. Bogle and others testified. So we look forward to a vigorous exploration of these issues. We're glad that our colleagues could join us this morning.